Good afternoon and welcome to UMACO TV. My name is Kemal Erkan. This is our weekly event we do from United Medical ACO, almost like a one-stop destination for different topics, different updates that you are able to get. And today, as it's the second Friday of the month,
Good afternoon and welcome to
we are going to have the diabetes wellness webinar. Sorry about the background. So. We have guest speakers. This is more like the panel type or panel style that we're going to do this. And I'm going to invite and let them in so then they can be part of the discussion. Jacob Heiser is one of our physician assistants. He has been with us in the past. Meghan Cowan is one of our new dietitians. She's going to join us. And of course, our director, Caroline Weber, is also going to be with us. And right now, they are joining one by one. And Sean is also here, and we'll discuss, if we have time, we're going to discuss some new topics for specific to Delaware issues. So, guys, how are you doing?
Good.
Good. All
right.
Good. So we are going to discuss osteoporosis today as part of the diabetes event. So the format is going to be the video running on the side, so it's not going to be PowerPoint. Once, I believe, Jacob, you are going to go first, and I'm going to start running the video right now. So what we can do is, if everyone can introduce themselves, and then we'll start right after that.
Okay. My name is Jacob Heiser. I'm a physician assistant, and I work in the Dover office.
I'm Caroline Weber. I'm one of the dietitians on staff, and I also help coordinate the diabetes program.
My name is Meghan Cowan. I am also one of the dietitians with United Medical.
Thank you. And then, Jacob, I'm going to go ahead and start the video and let me know if you need anything from us.
All right. Thank you, Kemal. Nice to be on here. So today we're going to be talking about osteoporosis as well as the connection between that and diabetes. So from my perspective as one of the primary care PAs, I'm going to go through what osteoporosis is, who gets it, how it happens, risk factors, how we diagnose it, especially in our setting as primary care, and a little bit about treatment. And then I'll talk a little bit about the connection between osteoporosis and diabetes as well. And then our dietitians will go into some of the dietary changes that can be made to prevent both diabetes and osteoporosis. So osteoporosis is defined as low bone mineral density, or BMD, which is caused by an alteration in the bone microstructure. So as most people know, our bones can be broken, but it does typically take a pretty strong amount of force to do so. However, if our bones become more brittle and fragile, it can lead to injuries that occur with much lower impact. And that's what we worry about, especially in our elderly population. So we have two different types of cells that are responsible for our bones. We have osteoblasts and osteoclasts. One of them builds bone, the other one resorbs bone, takes away old bone in place of new bone. And as we get older, we tend to have a bit of an imbalance where we start to resorb more bone than we're building, which over time will lead to a decrease in the density of the bones, which makes them weaker. So the stages of osteoporosis are, of course, normal, healthy bone mineral density. You can have low bone mineral density, but not osteoporosis, which is considered osteopenia, which just means low density. And then we have osteoporosis, which is even lower bone mineral density. And this is going to be most common in our postmenopausal women, but it can occur in premenopausal women as well as in men. So the most common cause is just the aging process. Like I said, we start to have an imbalance in your changes in your microstructure, as well as a decrease in sex hormones, which is why it's more common in our postmenopausal women, because you have a decrease in estrogen. Other risk factors that are associated with it are having a previous history of a fracture, using steroids for long periods of time, which we do have patients that have certain medical conditions which require them to be on steroids for chronic long periods of time. We low bone mineral or body mass index, I should say, low weight, being a smoker, either a current smoker or a long history of smoking, as well as low levels of activity. So a sedentary lifestyle where you're not putting pressure and strain on the bones, which is something that helps it know that it needs to make more bone. If you're not putting that strain on the bones, it's going to think that you don't need it as much and it will resorb more than it builds. So how do we diagnose osteoporosis? We typically do it through screenings. As primary care, when you come in and get your yearly physical or your Medicare well visits, we will typically screen all women who are 65 or older. At this point, almost all of our patients will be postmenopausal, likely have been for a number of years. We will only screen women who are below 65 or men if they have multiple risk factors, some of the things I mentioned earlier. So what we'll do to screen is we'll send you for a dual X-ray absorptiometry scan, or we call it a DEXA scan. In layman's terms, I will typically tell patients it's just a bone density scan. And it's a fancy X-ray. There is a picture on one of the slides for kind of what it looks like, and it will take a reading of multiple areas of bone that are common for fractures, such as the vertebrae, the hip, and the femur, the big bone in your thigh. What we do is we calculate a Z-score, and that is the number of standard deviations away from the mean for people of the same age based on the bone density. So if your bone density is between -1 or higher, then that's considered to be normal compared to people of your age. If it's -1 to -2.5 away from the mean, that's considered osteopenic or osteopenia. And if it's below -2.5, that's considered to be osteoporosis. So we use that as our grading criteria. The DEXA scan will also give us a percentage of fracture risk score for any bone as well as for hip fracture. And we use both the Z-score as well as the fracture risk score to determine how we're going to treat this. So with treatment and also prevention of osteoporosis, the most important thing that all of our patients can do is make some lifestyle modifications as they get older. And that includes making sure you're getting enough calcium and vitamin D, which are both important for healthy bones. Doing weight-bearing activities. Like I said, if you have a sedentary lifestyle, your bones are not going to be used to that level of activity, and they're not going to want to build as much. So things like yoga, Tai Chi, weight training, weight-bearing exercises, that's all going to be very beneficial for you in the long term. The other thing, if you're a smoker, reducing the amount that you smoke or completely stopping is going to be beneficial, as well as if you're a heavy drinker. High amounts of alcohol can also inhibit good bone growth. So for our women, it should be no more than 1 standard drink a day. For our men, no more than 2. So pretty much all of our postmenopausal women should be on calcium and vitamin D supplementation on top of what they're getting from their diet. Something that I typically recommend to patients is called Caltrate 600, and it's just a pure calcium vitamin D supplement on top of maybe a multivitamin that you might take. If we get to a point where your fracture risk score is high enough or your Z-score is low enough, we might initiate medication. That's something that would come from usually us. Most commonly would be called a class of bisphosphonates. One you might have heard of that we use a lot is alendronate or Fosamax, and that's a once-weekly pill that we'll have you on for maybe 2 to 5 years or so while we reassess on your DEXA scan to see how it's progressing. If you are osteoporotic or not responding well to supplementation, medication, we also will sometimes send patients to rheumatologists who are specialists with osteoporosis, and they can use other medications such as something like Prolia, which is actually an injection that you'll get about every 6 months, and again, continue to monitor. So when it comes to osteoporosis and diabetes, there are a couple of connections between the two, both based on things that can occur from diabetes as well as diabetes itself. We do have a higher, correlation between osteoporosis and our diabetics. It is a higher likelihood that you will have osteoporosis if you're diabetic, particularly if you're a type 1 diabetic. That's because you'll be diagnosed at a much younger age because your body's not producing insulin. And so when you start having those symptoms of diabetes and have to be treated, that's when your bone mineral density is still growing, because we typically peak at around the 3rd decade of life. So as far as risks that are associated with being a type 2 or type 1 diabetic, we have increased risk of falls and fractures, which, as we know, is a risk factor for developing osteoporosis. And that can come from hypoglycemia or low blood sugar. It can come from diabetic neuropathy, where you don't have feeling in your feet, and that makes it easier to trip and fall, or diabetic retinopathy, which would be eye disease, where you can lose some of your vision and again can lead to falls. There is a class of medications that we use to treat diabetes sometimes called TZDs, and osteoporosis is a risk factor of using those medicines. There are also diseases related to diabetes, such as kidney, eye, and vascular, which can lead to decreased bone growth and bone health. And our diabetics do tend to have lower levels of vitamin D, which, as I mentioned earlier, is important for bone health. So I'm going to turn it over to our dietitians to go through a little bit of the dietary modifications that can be made for both osteoporosis and bone health, as well as diabetes prevention.
Awesome. Thank you. So we're going to go through 5 steps to eat well for our bone health. There are a lot of different nutrients out there, specifically some we've heard of and some we haven't really thought of or thinking of the sources of where they come from. So we'll touch on the sources, and then we'll kind of go through some other steps and things to include in your diet to help overall bone health, just keep strong, healthy bones, since we are more at risk for osteoporosis with diabetes. So first and foremost is calcium. We all know and have heard that calcium is good for strong bones. We were all told to drink milk growing up. It's the building block of the bone. It helps prevent that bone loss, helps prevent fractures. So there are a lot of sources that you can get it from. The recommended dose is usually around 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams per day. Pretty hard to meet with your diet alone sometimes, especially if you're not much of a dairy eater. For example, I think 1 glass, 8-ounce glass of milk is about 300 milligrams of calcium. So you would have to drink a lot of milk or have other sources of calcium, which we'll talk about. But there'll be a lot of different varieties of foods that we'll go through that kind of touch on each of our nutrients. So we've got calcium as the main key player, but there's also vitamin D. So vitamin D plays a key role in the calcium absorption. So you really want the calcium and vitamin D to go together. It helps the regulate bone turnover as well. So including foods rich in vitamin D, which we'll go through in a minute, will be important for ensuring that you have good bone density. We've got vitamin K that plays a main role in bone strength and preventing bone breakdown. We've got phosphorus, which is an important mineral for repair of bone tissues, of body tissue and cells, and it helps provide that structure and strength for the bone. Magnesium, which is actually really great when you pair it with the vitamin D and calcium, because it actually helps the bone density and it actually allows keeping the calcium out of the soft tissue and allowing the bone to absorb the calcium. We have also got potassium. There are some studies that show that the potassium-rich diet can be preventative by reducing how much calcium the body loses through the urine. Same thing with zinc. There are some studies out there that show that bone growth it can be linked to better bone density scores with zinc as an adequate amount in your diet. So now that we know the nutrients that we need, there are nutrient sources that we want to pay attention to and specific foods that we want to include. Calcium, we all know dairy, kind of dairy products, cheeses, milks, yogurts are really great sources of our calcium, but there are also some other vegetables such as like kale and broccoli, which are great to include. There are some fortified products like breads and cereals, fortified products like I think soy milk as well. If you eat like salmon or sardines with the bone, that has a really great source of calcium as well. So you've got a wide variety. It's just including enough of it in your diet to meet your needs. Vitamin D, we've got salmon, fortified products again with bread and soy milk, eggs and dairy. Vitamin K, we have our leafy greens. So thinking of your spinach, your kale, Brussels sprouts, being aware if you're on Coumadin or warfarin that you need to check with your physician before kind of increasing any vitamin K filled foods in your diet, because we don't want to interfere with your medication. Phosphorus, you can find yogurt, tofu, nuts, pork, beans, chicken. That'll be a really great source for your phosphorus. Magnesium, you would find in potatoes. You could also find it in your leafy greens, tomatoes, raisins, and in some bread products as well. Potassium, we've got our bananas, our potatoes, our raisins. We also have some leafy greens, citrus, as our potassium options. And also check with your physician if you have kidney disease of any sort and you're on a restriction. You definitely want to check with your physician before increasing any potassium-filled foods. And then zinc, you would find in like your red meats, your yogurts, chickpeas, chicken. We've also got tofu and beans as well for our plant-based proteins. So that's just a wide variety. There are many more foods out there that contain these nutrients. Quick overview of them. But going into kind of step 2 of what can we focus on? So we know the sources of the nutrients that we need, but how do we apply that to kind of our overall diet? We basically just want to include more variety. So more fruits, more veggies, more whole grains. They all have such compact nutrient density that the more we include, the more likely we are to get access to these nutrients. So 3 to 4 or more servings of vegetables per day, 2 to 3 or more servings of fruit per day. With diabetes, just continue to monitor your portion size of your fruit. We want to spread that out through the day so we're not getting higher blood sugars at one time. 3 to 4 servings of whole grains per day. So one of the best key things that we talk about in diet counseling is try to make half your grains whole grains. So the more you can include, the more you might get access to certain nutrients. Also really great for managing your blood sugar over a long period of time. Then we move into step 3. So we've got protein sources and fat. Since protein is the major component of our bone tissue, it helps with that bone maintenance. So we want to focus on those lean proteins such as plant proteins, beans, nut, fish, poultry. Lower fat meats like red meats and low fat dairy products could also serve as your protein source. There are actually even plant protein sources that are rich in minerals and estrogen-like plant compounds that actually help preserve the bone. So including things like soy products, beans, lentils, those types of things will give you better support for your bones as well. And then going into our fat content, we want to focus on the monounsaturated fats such as olive oil, nuts, seeds, fatty fish, chia seeds, and really looking towards the lower fat of the saturated fat varieties. So the red meats, the lower fat dairy, having it maybe once or twice a week, or including that low fat like skim milk or low fat yogurt, that type of thing more often. Some studies even suggest that saturated fat can impact bone health in adults. There's some mixed reviews on that, but it's good to keep a mindful eye on the portion size overall, because we know saturated fat can affect us negatively in other areas of our health as well. So just some other things to keep in mind, limiting added salt. So just keeping an eye on your total salt intake. Salt can increase the amount of calcium that you excrete from your body in urination. So limiting to about 2,200 to 2,300 milligrams per day or 1 teaspoon. This can vary based on the person, based on the individual, because you might have a sodium restriction. So just be with your physician, having that conversation to know the guidance of where you should be sodium range-wise. Also listen to your provider on if you should be avoiding phosphate additives. Too much phosphorus in your diet can interfere with how much calcium is absorbed through the small intestine. So if we're having lots of products filled with like disodium phosphate or additives that you would find on the nutrition label, then you just want to be aware of that when you're picking out products and being aware of your total intake of phosphorus for the day. Other areas of things to limit that we've already kind of touched on today is limiting alcohol intake. So consuming more than 1 to 2 beverages per day could increase your risk of bone loss and the body's ability to absorb calcium. Drinking alcohol actually with the meal actually slows down the calcium absorption. So if you are having a calcium-rich food and you decide to have an alcoholic beverage, kind of separate the two so that you can get the maximum absorption from your calcium. And then limiting caffeine intake. So it can slightly increase calcium loss during urination. So studies show that 2 to 3 cups of coffee won't harm you as long as your diet contains an adequate amount of calcium, but being aware that the calcium can affect the absorption. So overall, we want a wide variety diet rich in fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains, just to protect our bones. But especially as we continue to manage our diabetes, we want to make sure our blood sugars are stable, not too high, not too low. And while it's difficult to reach the total nutrient needs through your diet alone, we want to be sure to talk with our dietitian, our physicians, keep checking in about any diet changes or supplementation that might be right for you. That's about it for calcium and bone health.
Well, thank you, Caroline. So, as I'm listening to you guys, one of the question comes to my mind is, I think, are we actually really preparing our body as we're aging? So, because a lot of almost everything that we talk about, it comes down to prevention. And it's something that once we get to that point, and if we start doing everything that you guys were just suggesting just now, that's too late, right? So we are not going to see the impact. So it's not something that you have to wait until you are 40, 50, 60 years old. So you have to build this lifestyle so that this is already part of your daily regime, so that you already exercise, you already reduce alcohol intake, you already stop smoking, because these issues are always out there, and that's part of our main problem that I see. One of the other things is that what would be and we don't have to give like a brand name necessarily, but over-the-counter vitamin, what would be the best ones for people to take? I don't know if, again, I mean, you can, we can give the brand name, it doesn't matter.
So from my perspective, you cannot go wrong with the multivitamin. A one-a-day multivitamin is always where we should start for every patient, pretty much no matter their age. They do make multivitamins for kids, for adults, and for our 50, 55, 65 plus. That is always a good place to start for just making sure that you're getting all the nutrients that you need. On top of that, as we start getting older, like I mentioned previously, the one that I always recommend is Caltrate 600. That is a specific calcium plus vitamin D supplement that has the recommended amount that Caroline mentioned earlier for specifically those two things, which can be tougher to get into your regular diet every day. What I always tell my patients is that there's three things that cause every health problem, and it's bad genes, bad luck, and bad habits. You can't control your genetics, you cannot control your luck, but you can control your habits. And the earlier you start having these good habits, the more likelihood you'll have of avoiding these illnesses and, leading a more fulfilled and, exciting life where you don't have to be coming in and seeing us constantly for, different issues. So, like you mentioned, as far as prevention, things I discussed, your dietary intake, reduction of smoking, alcohol, and exercise are always going to be good things to do.
Yep. All right. Well, anyone has any other questions or anything else you would like to add?
I would like to add in the dietary aspect of calcium. Some different seeds also have good sources of calcium in them. Some examples are sesame seeds and chia seeds. Specifically, chia seeds are really easy to implement into your daily lifestyle. They're used as a thickening agent when they're added to water and liquid. So for instance, when I'm cooking, if I'm making a homemade soup, I add some chia seeds into the soup and it thickens it up. And not only does it add extra protein, but it adds the extra calcium as well. Sesame seeds can be used in things like stir fry, Asian vegetables, and chicken. And so if you're following more of a plant-based diet, those seeds are really beneficial to add extra calcium and protein as well. And they're lower carb for our diabetes patients as well.
So, well, what's most important for our patients and whoever is watching us today, annual physicals are the key. And this is at a minimum, even if you don't have any symptoms, when we run certain labs and when we do the physical exam on an annual basis, this is how we can actually prepare ourselves. And instead of maybe trying to troubleshoot, we can actually prepare where we are going to be. We all know that we are going to have some of these issues. And the best would be to start the preparation early on, start adopting healthier choices. And well, it's easier to say it, I guess, because many of us being there and being young is a gift. But the thing is, everyone's going to get older. So, and we want to have healthier life when we age and when we have when we are at a certain level. So, well, thank you so much again. Thank you for joining us. So this was our first part of today's episode. So we are going to continue with other discussions. So Caroline will be back next month, second Friday again, with a different topic. I don't know if we have the guest speaker yet.
We'll be, yes, we're doing IBS with Beth and Joseph Apple. So we will have a good talk about that.
All right. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Sean, you are. So I'm going to turn this light on because
Yeah, I was like I was in the movie theater there watching.
this one.
There we go. Now you can see it. Yes.
Here we are. So, Sean, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Speaking of aging, so you're aging, right? So
Yes.
you and
Fine,
Carla
very
are
good.
also aged today. So who else?
Yes. Carla, our social worker, does have the same birthday as me, so we are celebrating together on this rainy Friday. But yeah, the big 3-5 for me.
Nice. All
And
right.
for her.
Well, happy birthday to all. So we have, we are going to open a couple new topics. So
Mhm.
because we have so many state officials,
Yeah.
and with some of them I'll be working with them very closely. And I feel like we have responsibility to better understand certain issues that we are having day to day. So when we look at the biggest concerns, so the education, which we do cover time to time. Economy is weekly, we cover economy. Corporate social justice, crime, energy and climate crisis, health, obviously we do that, housing, immigration and infrastructure. So these are different topics that in the future we want to kind of start focusing on and take it one by one.
Mhm.
And one of the big issues that we have, well, of course, you know, everyone has a different dynamic, different family structure. People who have kids, they may actually, they may like rank these issues in a different way. So like the education would be maybe number one for them. For someone like me, probably economy would be, and then health issues would be top priorities. So it's going to be different for everyone, but these are important enough. So when we look at one of the things that we want to focus on first was the crime and how we are actually handling that in Delaware, mainly in Wilmington.
Mhm.
So getting to know Wilmington a little bit, right now the population is about 71,000. And unfortunately, Wilmington was on the, and still probably is on top of the list in terms of the homicide rates. We were, if I'm not mistaken, we were number 4, number 5. A couple times we were number 1, and I'm like, see, like we can be number 1 in every once in a while. It's not the right stuff. So, but we want to kind of get down to the point of better understanding why it's happening, what we can do, how actually we can bring this to others' attention. Because if I have access to the senators and the governor and the other state officials, so then we have to be able to have a better understanding so that they can actually tell us why this is happening and why can't we, like, I don't want to see Wilmington in the top 10 on the crime rate.
Right.
So now, just before we have this episode today, you were asking me if I watched this video that you sent me. And funny enough that I actually posted that yesterday before you sent it to me. So this is why it's always good to have timestamp. So then you don't have to argue,
True.
right? But the point was that video was so disappointing.
Mhm.
So this guy, and he has a lot of followers,
Yeah.
more than we do, for sure. I think he started earlier, but it was so depressing. Like he just focused on the worst part of Delaware, or worst part of Wilmington. But there were certain things that he was pointing out, and he had two speakers with him.
Mhm.
What they were saying, it kind of makes sense and it doesn't make sense. Now, one good news is the total numbers did actually decrease
Correct.
since 2017,
Correct. Yeah.
but it's still not at the.
No, yeah, we're still up there on overall rankings as you're mentioning. I think the slideshow will show a little bit later. I think we're at the 13th now with that murder per
Mhm.
capita, which this is comparing out to per capita. So we've seen other cities on that list, it'll be like St. Louis, Chicago, Philly. But a lot of people, I guess, think just the magnitude of, like you mentioned, the population around 70,000. Some people think, oh, it's not like, it can't be that dangerous because it's not as big of a magnitude city-wise of what you may think.
Mhm.
When you hear the term city, you're thinking it's big, metropolis, but just saying that per capita, it's kind of astonishing to see that rate. And as you're mentioning, the whole state of Delaware, though, but it seems to be that it's Wilmington that's pulling that dragging it up on those rankings right there. And as you're mentioning, though, with that video, that guy does have like a series where he'll go into different neighborhoods or cities that are known to be typically dangerous and kind of just show maybe the living conditions, what the day-to-day life looks like, some of like the infrastructure in that area, and just it's kind of like a casual sense where he's just driving. It's like a video recorder on the his dash cam type thing, where he's not like interviewing people. It's just you're just seeing as if you're in the car with him driving through these streets. So it does capture in a real sense what it actually looks like on a day-to-day. But as you're mentioning, if you're only going down certain streets or certain areas, it kind of does have that bias where you're only highlighting a specific spot.
So let's give a little bit more background on this issue.
Mhm.
Why we actually picked this one first. So a couple of times, I think I mentioned it maybe in this show before. I had to call 911 when there was a homeless person at the bus stop. So my immediate reaction was, how can we actually help this guy? Maybe he doesn't know if he's able to reach out to the right people, and we had two social workers, but this was after hours. So then I said, okay, well, let's see if we can, maybe 911 can guide us. And then they did. But a couple of weeks later, I saw the same guy there again. So that means, that issue is not taken care of. Now, then I actually started thinking about this a little bit differently, and said, well, if I want to use this bus stop, let's say if I'm taking the bus, then there's someone who's using that as a resident. So then I'm not able to use. So it's not about his choice anymore, right? So it's about the safety of someone or someone else's right. So then I said, well, we shouldn't have these types of stuff. So then, as you know, I live in Wilmington. So when you take exit 7, there are 2 traffic lights, and there used to be one at each light, homeless people, but now there are 5 of them that I see. And then as the weather gets better, so then more people are out. So then I showed you the picture that I took, which I have to be kind of careful so that I don't want people to think that I'm just being creepy and then taking pictures of others. But this person was sleeping on the sidewalk. So we have responsibilities, and I feel like I'm able to help some of these people. So I'm like, okay, we have to figure out why this is happening, or someone else should be able to see and do something about it. And this can actually lead into a crime as well, because is it some homeless person who's just innocent, or is it someone who can be actually criminal, right? So all those, then since we have all the state officials that are coming to our show, I'm like, it would be irresponsible for us to not to mention and not to focus on these issues. So now you are from New York, and then you choose to stay after college here in, well, you don't live in Wilmington, but you live in Delaware now. So you have you bought a house, so it's kind of like you are settling here. So did that scare you at all?
No, I mean, I've seen, even if you're thinking where I'm from in New York, it's about 40 minutes north of the city, New York City. But there's other, technically they are classified as cities, but nearby that I've seen where, they also have really high crime rates, high murder. So I've been exposed to it. I guess if it was someone coming from like Wyoming to this, then there'd be like a much drastic difference from like a rural, but I think I've been exposed to it enough. But no, like living in Delaware, at least like Newark, where it's like suburbs, it's pretty like similar to what I've grown up with. But still, the fact that like you're saying, Wilmington from like here is only 20-25 minutes, where it's not, it's not like you have to go, hours and you're getting to this one city where you can easily access, because Delaware is a small state, but still large enough. But now, like just having that almost seems like it's in your back pocket, like your backyard, where this issue is kind of happening right in front of our eyes. It's not like, oh, it's so far distant where it doesn't impact us, or we don't see it on a daily basis. Where anytime if I go into Wilmington, like that same traffic light, those series that you're saying right off the exit, I see the same things that you're pointing out right here, and it does seem alarming. Even someone who has been exposed to it, but like you're saying, I think there's kind of our responsibility to at least bring light to it. And also the fact of if we actually have access to these state officials, it's their duty to acknowledge and ultimately like formulate plan of action to help address these issues, because that's what they run on the basis of what change they're going to make. So to at least question them and see, where their ideas are, what plans they have, or at least what they want to see happen, is kind of almost our duty now too, to reveal it and have them talk on it.
So I think the other thing that I think the guy was a little bit unfair to Joe Biden. So because he was actually aiming at him, but Joe Biden actually takes the train, used to take the train, Amtrak almost not every day, but so many times a week. So this area that we're talking about is so close to the train station.
Yeah.
So he should actually correct that. I mean, not like Joe Biden needs our protection, but that was kind of unfair because the issues that they know that these things are happening. Now, I think what happened in 2017, about 289 officers in motor vehicles on foot and bicycles, so they were authorized to deploy like new people. So since then, actually, the number went down drastically, but not enough overall. So now the other thing is that Buccini Group is invested in downtown Wilmington a lot. And I believe we invited them to be a guest in the show. I want to actually ask them what type of studies they have done, put that much money in. So they really put a lot of money. So like you may not remember the Christiana River part of the other side of the river in the river, where the train station is. So everything on this side of the river is fine, but if you're on the other side of the river, it's trouble. It used to be very trouble area. Now, so there are two new high rises. So they were from I'm going to say probably 2008 or 9, and then no one wanted to buy or rent because it was kind of
in that area.
It was dangerous almost. Like so, you have to run to your car, that type of stuff. But now they have more. There are more developments happening there. But this on the, I guess, west part of the river, right now, riverfront is pretty amazing. Actually, it's I don't like that. That's why I was thinking that guy could just drive maybe 2 more blocks. He doesn't have to come to where I live, but he can just go to the riverfront and then show the riverfront. Right. He didn't want to do that.
At least point out, like you're saying, it's an up and coming area. And
so we were going to bash Wilmington for the crime rate, but then after I watched that, I'm like, maybe not.
Yeah.
we need to protect the city. So
I think there's a lot of diversity in Wilmington itself, as you're mentioning. Like you'll have like the historic, wealthy estates with money. Then when you get into that inner city, like you're saying, you're kind of seeing that full spectrum. But if you're only focusing on one subpar, then obviously you're gonna have a biased viewpoint, but I'm sure like for what he does, that's kind of what his page is exposing, like the worst of the worst. So that fits what his theme was.
He
But
works maybe for the pharmaceutical companies for the depression. So put people in depression and then just give them
check
pills.
this out. Yeah,
Right.
thank you.
I mean, he had some points. I mean, I don't want to take everything away from him, but when you have that type of that large of audience, you really have to be more objective.
Yeah, like obviously the more research you do and the more data and statistics you can present, but also kind of let the people, formulate their opinion. Like don't necessarily show like a bias, like this is the way it is, I'm telling you, like, but obviously it's the viewer's discretion on what they want to take away from it, but it's only presenting a limited amount. But
so one of the interesting things with Wilmington was how the population actually went down. So apparently in 1950, we were at 110,000 in Wilmington. So that number went down to 70. That's a big decrease. In fact, even in 1920, the population was about 110,000.
Well, I know historically, the big ports right there in Wilmington, obviously the work back in the day may be more concentrated, but I'm obviously not an expert on populations and population movement, but obviously too, I know a lot more developments now are actually opening in the 2 lower counties where you'll see all these neighborhoods right off Route 13, where it seems almost like a cookie cutter, just mass development and mass housing push. And even where I am right here in Newark, it's the neighborhood is just going up like that, where it's, I guess, a big push which get people in housing, but if you're moving out of the city, maybe a lot of people do want that home ownership, but obviously there are townhomes and homes and other regular homes still in Wilmington, but you're just thinking of that city life where it's maybe they also more rural, but again, I don't know, I'm not an expert on population movements, but.
So now I'm gonna switch gears. So the economy, we talk about, I mean, almost every week we address some of the issues.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we are a little bit on the pessimistic side of it. And not just from the US standpoint, but globally. And the first recession actually is confirmed in New Zealand. So like they are saying that they are in a recession. So as a country. So, and it's a small country, it's far from where we are, but it's one of those well-developed countries. So if they are actually at that point, so I want people to be more careful with what they do with their money. Everything is so. Last week I had I don't go for food shopping a lot, so last week I had to, and because it's been a while, so I'm just trying to kind of also because of what we do in this show, I'm paying a little bit more attention to other things like cost and price tags. I'm like, so you buy like 2 eggplants, which you don't eat, and it's like $4.50. Like 2 eggplants, and then 3 zucchini is about $4.
Yeah.
So it's my favorite ice cream, Chunky Monkey, is $6.99. So and people don't understand, like they're like, oh, the inflation is down to 4%. It's not 4%, people. So I'm telling you, like, because the gas prices didn't go down to where it was $2.75 for the regular one. So it's over $4. So but I think the numbers that we are being given, be careful, don't trust those numbers. They are not real. So, and we keep saying the same thing. Now, you know how we always use the hypocrisy and double standards. So I actually I have this phrase that when laws don't apply equally to everyone, it's a classic case of tyranny. So I think this is so powerful in so many ways. And it's also kind of maybe communicating our issues so well in a way that we want to see things objectively. So if someone is going to be charged for something, that should apply to everyone else who's in the same position. We cannot pick and choose, and we are picking and choosing, and it's very difficult to even like talk about these things. So there was a just the day before, I think, was with the Fox News, where they said, "Want to be a dictator for the president."
Mhm.
Well, we call other countries' leaders dictator all the time. So if it's a big offense, then why are we doing it, right? If this is the point where they have to fire this guy who put that, and then it was only for 30 seconds. And if this is that big of a deal, why do you call President Erdogan a dictator? So, I mean, there's the election, there's the process, there's the system. So we can insult others like that. And then just when it comes to us, you're like, oh my God, no, like it's okay for, one person to have classified documents, the other one is not.
Right.
And this is how we stop believing in the system that we live in.
Oh, yeah.
And when people stop believing in the system that we believe in, then what happens is then all the other problems starts. So then the system is going to be undermined, and then people are not going to believe what they see, what they have, and they're going to start questioning, and it's going to increase the crime rates. It's going to increase the corruption. It's just going to make it so difficult for people to live. So this is why we have to be extremely careful and then take this responsibility very seriously, and supporting Democrat or state officials almost every level, and having this issue on the presidency level and having this hypocrisy is heartbreaking. So, and I wish that we didn't have to go through those types of issues in this country, but unfortunately, it is what it is, and we'll see where we are going to go.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that still needs to be unfolded in the coming next year or two, and then we'll see the election after. But as you're saying, you can't really have a double standard if you want things to continue status quo, because if not, there'll be that unsettling feeling, and the only way to fix that is a change. So see what happens.
Yep. All right, so now we have our Bariatric Friday with Dr. Erkan in 7 minutes. So now the mayor of Wilmington is someone that we want to send the invitation for one of our episodes.
Yeah, sure.
I believe he should be able to join, because we do want to kind of like get into that crime issue a little bit more and understand.
Definitely, at least give them the opportunity to voice, if we're reporting on it, and they can say what they feel, what their plan is, at least give them the opportunity to address it,
I have to do like, we almost have to do like an opposite video of what that I did.
The highlight. There you go.
So, well, we can do that. So again, thank you for listening to us and joining us, and we'll be back in the next 5 minutes with Bariatric Friday. Dr. Erkan will be with us, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.